were now led by Gordon Brown, half-blinded by his creed, he led the nation to the worst recession since the 1920s.
This story takes place in London, Britain, today. The Labour Party's annual conference sees Brown continuously asking ministers for support. He proposes yet another raise in taxes which could help the country to finally come out of these financial dark ages.
Dear fellow Labour Party members, we are here today to draft our last proposal, our last resort to finally come out of this recession. I know that these past few months have been hard on us, but it's time to make one last effort for Britain to react once and for all. It will only be a minor tax increase, and if we keep it quiet, the taxpayer will not know any better. Our banks will finally jumpstart, and all our political enemies will have to admit that I and the Labour Party have defeated the recession once and for all. And next month, when we hold our election campaign, Labour will triumph once again.
It's been reported that Gordon Brown has been indicted in the expenses claim scandal. After last month having been forced to repay £1,000 of the annual film fiasco, now we learn that the Browns have claimed the whole of their Bedfordshire house on taxpayers' money and will be forced to pay it all back. The expenses claim scandal has troubled the PM and other ministers since last year, and the people, the taxpayers, are becoming more and more frustrated with their government.
I would now like to welcome on stage my wife, Sarah Brown, to receive an award for her huge efforts in the Winning for Women campaign. This campaign has raised £5 million over the last 2 years. And as wife of the Prime Minister, Sarah has been the face and the ambassador of the campaign. Please welcome on stage, Sarah Brown! Sarah!
We've both become increasingly worried about the public and private disunity around the leadership question. And the way to do that is very simple and straightforward, as we say in our letter, a secret ballot of all Labour MPs.
My sense is that there are large concerns amongst Labour MPs about our
and I saw Hewitt and Boone, and I thought, I've seen them on the Parliamentary Channel. They're famous. So, naturally, I want to go and get their autograph. And I overheard them bad mouthing Brown.
What exactly did they say about Gordon Brown?
They were bitching about the Prime Minister, saying he was incompetent, and I don't know, about the secret ballot, and that he was being a bad leader.
So why did you decide to report them?
I can't stand political bitching. Those guys are all hypocrites. Brown's just a victim of the system he's part of. Even though I don't think he's such a good leader, those guys are just going to do damage to Britain.
Thank you very much, Maidenhead. I am sure the government will remember the great deed you have done for the country. Now, back to the studio.
A few months after the incident of Mott, and our Brown is still in power, with few friends, who do not know how to gain the people's approval. Brown turned a peculiar character, raised in the National Front, and today is chairman of the British National Party, Nick Griffin, senior for our short-sighted PM. Brown turns to Griffin, because he seems to have a clear idea of who is to blame for the recession and the failures of New Labour.
Nick, the Labour Party cannot control this country anymore. My political adversaries are gaining more and more strength, and I am only keeping power because of the taxpayers' indecision. What should we do?
Gordon, it's very simple. And we of the BNP have been saying this all along. We have to expel all of the immigrants from the country. We British people can't survive this recession with the burden of providing jobs and resources for these immigrants. Not only will we have to change the hideous immigration rules created by your government, but we simply have to kick out all of the immigrants. This will give British jobs back to British people and get us out of this recession.
That's a very democratic choice, but I think we have no alternative. I am going to appoint you my new Home Secretary. We will pass a parliamentary law which expels all immigrants from the country. Hopefully this will give us back our national pride and economic strength.
In the meantime, Esther was becoming more and more acquainted with the beds of Downing Street. Earlier in the week, she had met the Queen on an official visit, and her affair with Brown was a talk of Westminster. Whilst many MPs were critical of Brown and his new affair with this young and pretty intern, Griffin was more and more irritated by the continuous anti-BNP campaigns that were taking place in Westminster and all around the United Kingdom.
Coming to know about Griffin's new law to expel the immigrants and other minorities from the country, Esther does the only thing she knows how. She creates a Facebook group. This group condemns the new law and invites all immigrants, reasonable taxpayers, to demonstrate against Griffin and the Brown government.
Later that night,